Alright, what's up again, YouTube? Um, Back by popular demand, I'm going to be giving some of my thoughts on week 3 in the fantasy season, and my predictions are going to be based on ESPN Standard League scoring, so 4 points for touchdowns for quarterbacks, 6 points for everybody else, no PPR, you know the drill. So basically what I'm going to be doing in this video is just taking you through the ESPN rankings for each position and saying what I do and don't agree with. And there is plenty that I don't agree with. So anyway, without further ado, here are the quarterbacks. I agree with ESPN's top two. They've got Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. Uh, I disagree with 3 and 4. I would have Ben Roethlisberger as my number 3 quarterback. I think that top tier of Rodgers, Brady, and Roethlisberger, they're all basically matchup proof. I think you're starting them every week if you have them. Um, they're all just in high-powered offenses with a lot of weapons and great offensive coordinators. Everything. I just like everything about those three. Um, instead of After that, my number 4 is Andrew Luck. So kind of switch Roethlisberger and Wilson in the ESPN rankings. Tennessee has a deceptively good pass defense, but I'm not buying it as much since they faced Tampa Bay in Jameis Winston's first NFL game, and then Cleveland, whatever is going on there. I think Luck's got to turn it around. You know, at some point, I just got to see it first before I put him in that top tier again. uh, Number 5, I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. Don't know how much he's going to be passing the ball against Chicago. I expect Seattle to be up big pretty much the entire game. So we'll see about that. Uh, Peyton Manning, they have Peyton Manning at number 6, and I totally disagree with that. I think he should be out of the top 10. I'm not buying Manning at all. I'm not buying much of the Denver offense at all, really. Um, my number 6, I think I've got my next two are going to be Carson Palmer and Cam Newton. I expect Carson Palmer to be here about in the 6 and 7 spot pretty much the entire season, assuming he stays healthy and assuming that his wide receiver core stays healthy. His offensive coordinator and head coach love to throw the ball deep. He's got some weapons: Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown, this new guy named J.J. Nelson. I think they're going to have a solid offense this year, and I think San Francisco is definitely torchable. Um, Carson Palmer right now is averaging 5th in yards per attempt, and San Francisco is actually giving up the 3rd most yards per attempt to opposing quarterbacks so far. So Cam Newton, I'm not sold that he's going to be top 10 every week. This is more matchup dependent, but he's playing New Orleans. I think he's going to be great because New Orleans' defense is terrible. The only concern is his wide receiver core is kind of depleted. I think their best wide receiver right now is, maybe Ted Ginn Jr., maybe a rookie, and maybe their tight end. So we'll see about that. Um, my next one, I think I agree with ESPN. Matt Ryan, especially assuming Julio Jones is healthy. I think they're one of the great quarterback wide receiver duos in the country. My only concern is Ryan's interception rate is pretty high. They are playing Dallas, which is kind of a bad matchup. You wouldn't think so, losing Orlando Scandrick and stuff like that, but they really like to take the air out of the ball. Opposing offenses really don't get that much opportunity to score, and I think their defensive coordinator Marinelli has really had a good effect on them. They've only actually given up one passing touchdown uh, in the first 2 games, so that's pretty good. We'll see how it works out. And last in my top 10, I'm switching Drew Brees and Eli Manning, and if Drew Brees isn't healthy, I might drop him down even further. Um, Eli Manning's going tonight against Washington at home. And I know how Thursday games go, and I don't know. I don't know much about this pick actually, but um, he does have one of the best young receivers in the NFL. They did just let Preston Parker go. We'll just have to see. Um, some other things that really, I guess, came to mind. Peyton Manning is actually last in the NFL in yards per attempt. Just shows you how much of a noodle arm he has. Marcus Mariota, I'm keeping my eye out on him. I really think he has potential to be a good rookie quarterback and kind of a streaming option for when your quarterback has a bye. Another one, Ryan Tannehill, got a little banged up ankle, but I think he could have a top 10 year as well. Okay, moving on to the running backs. Um, I mean, obviously, I think your top five are pretty much set, kind of like ESPN has them. Um, AP, Marshawn Lynch, Le'Veon Bell, Jamal Charles, Matt Forte. I disagree with the order. I think Le'Veon Bell is going to run roughshod over the St. Louis defense. Um, Pittsburgh has one of the best offensive lines in the NFL right now, and Le'Veon Bell is completely fresh and healthy. And if he's taking a leaf out of Tom Brady's book, he is angry and ready to play. So I think he's going to be the best running back from here on out. So I'm going to pick him as number one. My second is Jamal Charles. I think Green Bay is giving up 5.3. No. Yeah, Green Bay is giving up 5.3 rushing yards per attempt, and that's really high. They have given up the second most yards rushing as well. Um, so I think Jamal Charles is going to have a field day against them. Um, I'd probably put Adrian Peterson next. San Diego, kind of fair to middling rush defense. Minnesota has the 10th best run blocking offensive line so far. And he is Adrian Peterson, and he did have a great week last week, even with getting a touchdown vultured. He still scored 16 points last week. Marshawn Lynch, I think he's going to have a great game. The only thing I'm worried about, kind of like with Russell Wilson, don't know how long he's going to be. Don't know how long he's going to be in. I think they're going to just destroy Chicago, and Lynch is a little banged up, so you have to wonder how much he'll actually be in there and how much Seattle wants to get him out once they get up big. I'm actually going to disagree with Matt Forte at number 5 as well. In a surprise pick, I actually agree with ESPN. I have Latavius Murray as my number 5 running back. I think he has faced two very good defenses in his first 2 games. And if that's his floor, I can't wait to see what he does with his ceiling. So I have him in my other 3 leagues actually. I thought he was going to have a great year. And Cleveland is dead last in rushing yards given up so far. And I don't really see that changing. Oakland has the 5th ranked run blocking offensive line, so I'm actually really high on Oakland's offense this year. See anything else that jumps out at me. Jeremy Hill, I think he could have a good game. You just got to wonder how many touches Gio is going to vulture from him. Baltimore is supposed to have a good run defense, but then again, Cincinnati does have the 4th best offensive line as far as rushing goes. So I'm pretty high on Jeremy Hill this week as well. Next, I've got Mark Ingram against Carolina. This is dependent on whether Breeze plays. I like him out of the backfield. He's kind of a dual threat, especially in that Sean Payton offense. And, at some point they've got to get back on track. I think. So especially if Breeze plays, I've got Mark Ingram solidly in my top 10. Um, my I disagree with ESPN with LaShawn McCoy and Jonathan Stewart being in the top 10. McCoy is kind of hampered by a hamstring. He's not getting goal line touches because Carlos Williams is getting those. Jonathan Stewart, I just don't know what to expect from the Carolina offense this week, even against a bad New Orleans team. New Orleans has proven better at stopping the run than they have the pass, I believe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, um, C.J. Anderson at 11. He's out of my top 20. I think he's bad. I'm glad to be rid of him. Um, Justin Forsett, especially with Lorenzo Taliaferro getting a setback with a little foot injury, I think the Baltimore offensive line is better than its ranking of 18 right now, and I expect them to get it together against Cincinnati at home. I think Forsett could have a good game, especially if he gets the goal line touches that Taliaferro presumably won't be getting. Um, I'm also fairly high on Chris Ivory if he plays. The Jets offense is vastly improved from last year. They do have at least a credible threat of throwing the ball that's going to open up some running lanes and already has. Philly has got a middling run defense, and if they don't show up on offense like they have the last 2 weeks, they could be New York could be running the ball even more than they usually do. Um, I also like Carlos Hyde. I think he's a monster when he's healthy. The only thing you got to worry about is whether San Francisco is going to have to be passing a lot. So Joseph Randle, he's an interesting play. I've made a trade for him before Romo got injured. Um, I expect Dallas's offensive line to pick it up as well. They are in the top 10, but I expect them to be, by the end of the year, one of the top five O lines, if not the best, like they were last year. So we'll see what Joseph Randle can do. Um, DeMarco Murray, not high on him. They've got actually the worst run blocking O line so far during the season, and they're playing the best run defense. And he's already had a lot of negative yards, and they're playing the top run defense in the country. I just don't think that's going to go well. See, Alfred Morris losing touches to Matt Jones concerns me. He had a lot of very short plays last week, and the New York Giants are actually number 3 in rush defense. But Washington does have a good O-line. They are 8th in run blocking right now. So, and Matt Jones really has to show me that he can do it on a regular basis before I'm going to put him over Alfred Morris. Lamar Miller, he didn't practice today, so that's kind of concerning for Miller owners. Buffalo is the second best run defense, and Miami is the 31st run blocking offense. So that's just not a good matchup anyway. I'm not buying him at 18. I've actually got T.J. Yeldon, Frank Gore, Dion Lewis, and Isaiah Crowell above him. I think all 4 of those guys have some good upside. T.J. Yeldon for Jacksonville, that's an interesting matchup because New England is giving up the most yards per attempt on the ground, actually. Losing Vince Wilfork seems to have hurt them a lot. So if they don't get down really early in the game, T.J. Yeldon could get a lot of carries and a lot of yards. Gore, I think he has to turn it around. I mean, that Indianapolis offense is really concerning me, but you got to think they got to turn it around. Dion Lewis, the always unpredictable New England backfield, I think he's got to lead it again this week. For some reason, LeGarrette Blount just, I mean, he had a bad preseason and he got suspended. He was on the field for like 4 or 5 plays last week. Who knows? Maybe Belichick has found a bell cow. Um, Next, I've got Isaiah Crowell going against a bad Oakland rush defense. Cleveland doesn't have the greatest offensive line, but Crowell's a hard runner. They got rid of Terrence West, and I'm not sure how much Duke Johnson's going to be running. I think he's a rookie. So I expect Isaiah Crowell to lead the backfield there. See if anything else jumps out to me here. Some of the lower ranked players, Danny Woodhead is actually the sixth ranked running back in points so far this year, but I think he's got to regress to the mean soon. Matt Jones, the popular waiver wire pickup, he's somebody to keep an eye out for. I think he's going to, I mean, Washington's got a good O-line, and he is a fierce runner, it seemed. I just not trusting him in his third game as an NFL running back. Plus, it's Thursday. I just don't like Thursday games. James Starks at 33. Keeping an eye on whether Eddie Lacy plays, and if so, if he's just going to be a decoy or what. Starks filled in pretty well for Lacy last week. Didn't reach pay dirt, but could this week. Gio's another one to keep an eye on, Gio Bernard. See if he steals some more carries this week from Hill or whether that was just kind of an anomaly. If you're playing in a deeper league, something to look for is David Johnson. I think he's going to be hard to keep off the field for Arizona, especially with Andre Ellington hurt and Chris Johnson kind of in the twilight of his career. He showed a lot of explosiveness. It's just up to whether Bruce Arians gives him the opportunities. I think he's talented enough to really turn it on. I'm actually pretty high on the Arizona offense this year. Another one to look at if Arian Foster doesn't play or if he's limited this week. Apparently Chris Polk. Chris Polk is the guy now, and I think he's passed Alfred Blue in the pecking order in Houston. So, if you're really hurting, that might be somebody to keep a lookout for. Anybody else? Same with Ryan Matthews for Philly. Just keep an eye out if you're a DeMarco Murray owner. I think I don't know if he's going to play this week, and if he is, how good he'll be. That's just a tough matchup against the Jets defense. All right. So next we'll be moving to wide receivers. I think these are a little more unpredictable just because the sample size is a lot lower with wide receivers than it is with running backs and quarterbacks. Just because they just don't touch the ball nearly as much as those other two positions. I agree with the top two, Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. I think they're every week monsters. A little bit of cause for concern with Odell Beckham. The Washington secondary looks pretty good this year. New York just released Preston Parker, and Reuben Randall really hasn't shown up this year either. So OBJ is kind of the one guy that defenses will be able to key in on. And also, he is posting only a 60% catch rate, which, you can either put that up to regressing to the mean from his outstanding performance last year or Eli Manning being inaccurate. Don't agree with Demaryius Thomas being number 4. I'm actually pretty low on him for the rest of the year. He's not in my top 10. He's only catching 60% of his passes as well. He has no touchdowns. He's playing mostly on the outside. and Peyton is really struggling with those outside throws. He's not being able to get any accuracy because he's having to heave them so far. If you watch those games that Peyton's played so far, um, Randall Cobb at number 5. I can't really argue with it. He's a number 1 wide receiver in one of the top 3 offenses in the NFL. Hopefully he's getting healthier from that shoulder injury. I just don't know how long that lingers. But at least it's not to his legs. Um, AJ Green, fine with that. Emmanuel Sanders, I like him because a defense has to key in on Demarius. You can't just leave him open. But Peyton is really showing that he can only throw in the middle of the field, and that's kind of where Sanders thrives. Um, DeAndre Hopkins owners might want to watch out. He's really suffering from bad QB play. He's only catching 58% of his balls thrown that way, and probably due to Ryan Mallett kind of being bad. But I don't know. He is the only wide receiver there except for Cecil Shorts. Julian Edelman, I'm high on him this year. I think he'll be top 10. He is just a target monster. I'm sure Julian Edelman owners want their leagues to be PPR. He's had something crazy like 24 catches or something ridiculous. I'm also dropping Calvin Johnson. I think he's going to have a bad year, especially as long as Stafford has his rib injury. I think everybody knows how bad a rib injury is for a quarterback. He's just getting old, and I can't remember a year that he has actually finished healthy through 16 games. He's only catching 57% of his passes. His efficiency ratings are way far down from where you would expect Calvin Johnson's to be. Brandon Marshall, I'm high on Brandon Marshall. Ryan Fitzpatrick seems to look his way a lot and seems to be playing or throwing a lot more accurately than I remembered at his other stops. So I like Brandon Marshall. He seems to have gotten an attitude adjustment as well. Kind of felt like he just didn't care much last year with Chicago. Honestly, can't believe T.Y. Hilton is number 12 on ESPN's rankings. I have Dante Moncrief ranked ahead of him. I still don't think Hilton's fully healthy. He had a little setback in that game last week. Caught one big pass for about 27 yards and had to leave the game after trying a little juke move against the cornerback. Moncrief, I think, is going to have a monster year. He's catching almost 70% of his passes. He's got the 8th most targets out of any wide receiver in the league, and he seems to do well with them. Some thoughts, I guess, on some lower ranked guys. I'm pretty high this year on John Brown for Arizona. I'm actually higher on him than I am Larry Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald, I think, especially by the middle and end of the year, I think he's going to start showing his age. Brown is a real deep threat in an offense that likes to throw it deep. Both the head coach and Carson Palmer, the quarterback, really thrive on the deep pass. Jarvis Landry, I kind of put him in the same category as Edelman. He's just a target hog. I'm not sure if he's sniffed the end zone yet, but you got to expect that to happen at some point. Mike Evans, you got to show it to me. Didn't show up on the stat sheet last week, and playing with a erratic rookie quarterback like famous Jameis, just don't know what's going to happen. Let's see, anything else? Some ones that I'm not so high on that are ranked in the top 25. Not high on Jeremy Maclin. I'm pretty sure we were all in diapers when Kansas City wide receiver caught his last touchdown pass. Brandon Cooks is only catching 60% of his balls. He was supposed to be number one. Drew Brees is hurt. ESPN's got him ranked 17th. I don't buy it at all. Steve Smith, senior at Baltimore, realize he's getting a crazy amount of targets. He's another one that's getting kind of old, and he's only catching about half the balls thrown his way. Going to Cincinnati, or playing at home against Cincinnati this week. He's kind of a boomer bust guy. He's either going to get you 2 or 3 points or 15 points, so I just don't like that inconsistency. Some guys that I think are going to show up this week, I'm high on Terrence Williams for Dallas. He's had a really efficient start to the season. I'd like him a lot more if Romo was there, but Brandon Whedon actually played pretty well in relief of Romo last week, and we'll just have to see. Already mentioned John Brown, high on him this year. Kendall Wright is another one that I'm really surprised, but I think he's going to have a great year. He's been extremely efficient, and that's not just that first game, really, either. Let's see. Kendall Wright's ranked in the top 15 as far as efficiency goes. He is actually the fourth best wide receiver according to some metrics. Definitely hasn't seen the targets that other wide receivers have, but catching 3/4 of his passes, got a touchdown, and his value over the average wide receiver is 67%, which is good for fourth in the league, only behind Julio, Larry Fitzgerald, and Antonio Brown. So take that for what you will. All right, moving on to tight ends. I think this is going to go pretty short. I think there's 3 that you're obviously starting. I think you're starting Travis Kelce, Tyler Eifert, and Rob Gronkowski. I think those are no-brainers. I highly disagree with ESPN putting Jimmy Graham anywhere in near the top 3. There are 17 tight ends who have seen more passes go their way this year so far. They are just not using him correctly. I don't know why they traded for him. It seems kind of silly at this point. Tight end's such a kind of a volatile position that I'm just going to mention some that I think could have big weeks and some that I think will bust. I like Jordan Reed. If it wasn't Thursday, I'd like him even more. He seems to really get along with Kirk Cousins pretty well, and it's not like Kirk has a cannon for an arm, so he likes to check down to the tight ends a lot. He's very athletic. He's posted good numbers his first 2 games, so we'll see. If Ladarius Green plays, I like him as well. He's also had a pretty efficient start to the season. You'll only probably want to start him for the next 2 weeks because that's when Antonio Gates comes back. Green is actually the 5th most efficient tight end so far this season. You just got to wonder. He is maybe returning for a concussion, so just keep an eye out on that. I have Greg Olsen in some of my leagues, but I think I'm benching him until further developments. He's only catching 41% of his passes. Cam Newton just has not been on. The defenses are keying in on him. He's really the only receiver they have. And unlike some people, I don't think he's dominant enough to take advantage of those targets. I think he's really being hurt by that. Really don't understand the love that people are giving Zach Ertz. I see him starting in a lot of my leagues. ESPN has him ranked 14th. I don't have him anywhere close to that. He has the bottom efficiency in qualifying tight ends so far this season. I mean, for God's sake, Jared Cook has double the yardage Zach Ertz does. He's just terrible. Um, some people to think about. I like Eric Ebron. He is in the top 10 in targets, solidly in the top 10 with targets. Stafford's kind of hurt, and they've been passing a lot, so you got to wonder how many, kind of intermediate routes he'll be looking for if he can't throw deep with those rib injuries. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but Jacob Tamme is quietly having a pretty good year too. He has 9 catches for 96 yards. So if you're really desperate, or one of your tight ends got injured or something, he's something to look for. Especially with Julio Jones maybe being a little limited. It's just something to think about. They are playing Dallas, who has so far had a pretty good secondary, so take that for what it's worth. Um, Heath Miller is somebody that I'm really high on as well. I think I probably have him probably number 6 or 7, maybe 8, behind Jordan Reed. He's getting 62% of the red zone targets for Pittsburgh, who figures to be there a lot. They're a really high-powered offense. I just expect those to turn into touchdowns a lot, actually. Really, ESPN has Martellus Bennett as the number 6 tight end. I'm not buying that either, especially if Jimmy Clausen's tossing him the ball this week. Seahawks secondary is back in form. They got Cam Chancellor back this week. I think Chicago is going to get blown out. I'm not sure if they'll score 10 points. I just think Martellus Bennett is a bad bet. Let's see. Guess that's about it for tight ends. Don't care about kickers. I think kickers are stupid in leagues. They're just kind of random. I mean, the difference between the number 1 kicker and number 10 kicker is pretty much negligible over the course of a season. I think we could get rid of them, and I'd be happy. So, on to defenses. I don't like these rankings either. I think Seattle and Denver are my 2 big picks for this week. Denver has just been getting after the quarterback and causing all sorts of disruption. Von Miller, Shane Ray, DeMarcus Ware, I think they're pretty much unstoppable. Stafford's hurt, and Detroit's offensive line isn't exactly the greatest. Seattle, more matchup dependent. Chicago is going to be terrible. I definitely have them in the top 2. Figure they'll score at least 1 touchdown. After that, it gets kind of hairy. Depending on, I think the Jets are going to have a good week. They've got a great matchup, taking their number 1 rush defense into Philly, who's got a garbage run blocking offensive line so far. ESPN has the Patriots at number 3, and I'm not buying that. I think Jacksonville is improved. I think you can run on the Patriots this year, and I think Jacksonville's going to have to be throwing it, so I think the Patriots will give up some points. I mean, it's not like they don't have Vince Wilfork in the middle to stop the run, and they don't have Brandon Browner or Darrelle Revis in the secondary anymore either. So I think the Patriots will win, and pretty big, but I think they'll give up some points as well. Depending on the health of Lamar Miller, I like the Buffalo Bills defense. They've got a lot of talent, and Miami's offensive line is pretty bad, 31st in run defense, or in run blocking. Conversely, ESPN has the Miami defense going against Buffalo, ranked 6. I'm not sure how much I buy that either. Buffalo's offense looks good so far. Well, good for Buffalo. And that stuff about Ndamukong Suh kind of making it up as he goes along on defense is kind of worrisome. So, jury's out on that. I've definitely got the Cardinals ranked fairly high. San Francisco looked terrible on the road last week, got blown out. And I think they've got a great defensive line. Got Patrick Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, both healthy. I think they'll put up a lot of points. Don't understand ESPN putting the Rams in the top 10. They're facing one of the two best offenses in the league in Pittsburgh. I think they'll get blown out, or at the very least give up a lot of points. Because I guess it's not like Pittsburgh's very good either on defense. Carolina Panthers is solidly in my top 10. Definitely over the Dolphins, Rams, Patriots. They're playing New Orleans, who might not even have Drew Brees, so keep an eye on that if you have the Panthers D. Anything else that kind of jumps out at me? Not really. Defenses are kind of hard to predict, kind of touchdown dependent. And if you have a bad offense, that can count against your defense if the ball gets taken away on the wrong side of the field. But yeah. So anyway, those are my thoughts for week 3 so far, and good luck to your team.